Okay, so we're going to get started. We're going to start back from the beginning and redo everything I did except in one sort of smooth path. So we're going to start by opening Muse. This is the dialog box that's going to pop up. You're going to click New Site. So very similar to Dreamweaver in that way. Then you can input any information you want here. I'm going to once again change this to 1000 by 600. And this minimum height, this will change, the height of the page will change depending on how much content you put into it. So I'm just setting that to kind of give me a good workspace. I'm going to set my margins to 0, and I'm going to set my padding, both top and bottom, to 0, and you'll see why in a moment. So I set all of those to 0 just because I want to add those in myself if I do. I'm going to click OK. And this is what we're going to start with. So we're going to start with a page. I'm going to build my site real quick. So if I know what pages I want, it's really easy to just click the little plus and then add the pages and title them. And now whatever you title these will be the names that appear in the menus for navigation. So be aware of that. So about me and then contact. So this might be kind of the setup of your site. Now if you maybe wanted like 2 or 3 more galleries, you could definitely do that. I will add those here and we'll worry about those later if we want to. So we'll call this one traditional. And we'll call this one digital. So we'll just pretend that I have 2 different galleries here. Now once you set up your sitemap, the next step is to actually begin designing. So there's a lot of immediacy here. You get right into this, build this, and you can go right to designing your page. There's no complicated linking of style sheets or any of that. It's all right there. So now when I took off the padding, that eliminated this space up here. So this is space above the browser. So let's preview that. Let me show you what that is, just so you know when you come to do the edit. So this space that would appear above the page is what the padding is in this particular case. I didn't want any of that, so I'm going back to design. And I'm going to bring that back up to 0. The same is true of this one down at the bottom. You can see that there's 2 overlapping. If I pull that down, I can add more to the bottom of the browser. And you can see when I'm actually clicked, it says bottom of browser here. So that's just something to be aware of, is what those do. These are your header and your footer. And you can see when I click them, it says footer, and it gives you kind of the location of where that is. I might be able to select this and kind of move it. Doesn't show it there, but basically I can kind of see where I'm at with that. Same thing here, so header and footer. So I may open up my header just a little bit and get that aligned there. And then same here, I'm going to try and get that exactly at 500. So now that I have that, I can actually bring all of this stuff down larger if I want. So if I want to open up my page, bring that right there. I drop this down here. That might give me a little more room to design. Now something that you should note is because when I created the page I had sticky footer checked, this section will stay at the bottom of the page. So I can continue to add more content to this area and it will just make the page longer. It won't overlap the footer or cause the footer to go in front of any content. This will stay sticky to the bottom. So once you've sort of adjusted that with your master, it's time to start adding some of the design to the page. Now, I personally still like to go to my desktop and create a page and organize my files there, but with Muse, that's actually not necessary. If you just go link all your files in, as long as you don't go move them, it will maintain the link for when you export it. So I know we sort of showed that last time, but let's do that again. So I'm going to actually change my browser fill. So this gray color, which is right here, if I just want to change the color, I can come right here and change it. If I want to actually add a background image or a gradient, I need to click the title browser fill. From there, I can select a color, or I can select an image, or I can select gradient. So if I wanted to have a gradient, I could do something like this if I liked that. Otherwise, I can go back to solid and I can pick an image from one of my files. So I'm going to go hunt for that. That should be somewhere right around here actually. Under images in one of my old sites, I have something called background texture. I will grab that. I will let it tile and I will anchor it to the top left corner. Those are just the defaults, which is fine because this is a seamless background texture. One other thing here is you can have sort of scroll with the background, and this is kind of how you create parallax. So when I hover over it, it says, defines the motion of an item in relation to the vertical scrolling in a web browser. As a page is being scrolled down by the user, you can define horizontal and or vertical motion for an item. The scroll motion, oh, we lost it, here we go. The scroll motion effect is only available in the normal state and is not available for pinned items, inline items, or items inside a group or widget. 100% width items can only have vertical motion defined. So if I click this, I can add vertical motion to this image as I scroll. So I can have like basically the background shift and move out of the way or kind of move around in addition. I don't want to do that because this is a seamless texture, so you're not really going to see it doing that, or it's going to look weird. It's just going to look like a distortion. So I'll stick with my regular fill using an image, tiling it, and I'll check out of that. Now if I want to change this white area, my actual page area, I just need to be clicked in the page and come to fill. Now in fill, once again, I can just select a variety of different colors. I can turn off the fill, or I can click fill and get some more options. So once again, I can actually put a gradient here as well. So I could have like white to maybe light gray. Let's make that a little more defined. And I could set that to be a vertical gradient. Now if I wanted it to go the opposite way, I would just need to switch the colors. So I would have to come over here and select the light gray color. If I wanted it exact, I could just come over here and copy the code here, but for that, this is fine like that. So there's my vertical one. You can also adjust the focal point. So if you notice when I drag this, it changes kind of where the gradient blends. So I can kind of push it down. I can leave it sort of around 50. I might push it down just a little bit like that. And then you can give it a size too. So if you give it a size, the gradient will only run to a certain distance and then it will be the solid color all the way down. So that's something you can do. You can pick a solid, and then you can also choose an image. So if I wanted a different background image for this, I could definitely do that. For this case, I'm going to leave the gradient just so we can sort of experience what that's like. And then once again, if you have an image, you can select some scroll motion, but we do not. So we'll leave it like that. Now the last thing I don't want, that I want to get rid of, is this black stroke that's actually around my page here. And I can turn that off by selecting the none. And then oftentimes for the code, for some reason I find if you don't put 0, sometimes you'll still see a stroke. So set it to both 0 and none. I can also actually round the corners of the page area here. So if I set those to like 30, you might be able to see them a little better. Yep, there you go. So you can see my rounded page area corners there. I am going to preview that and then we'll save it. So this is kind of what the page looks like at the moment. You can see that because I don't have the gradient at a certain length, it will just stretch to fit the area. If I had set the gradient at a certain length, it would end where I told it and then be a solid color the rest of the way down. It'll sort of blend into that. So that's something you can do if that matters to you or that helps you out in some way, gets the design right. I'm going to go back to design, and now I'm going to save this. So once again, just Command S. Once I save this, all I have to do is title this. So this will be like portfolio site, and I'm just going to save it to the desktop. And there it'll be. So if you see that over there, it's just going to create a portfolio.muse file. That's like a new file for Adobe. So since CC came out, you now have portfolio site.muse. Now that doesn't mean that this can just be moved wherever you want to take it. Here's the issue. If you're working back and forth between multiple computers, you want to export your site before you move it, or you want to make sure that you actually, at the very beginning, set up the site the way you did with the Dreamweaver site. So we call this portfolio. You would want this to be inside that. You would want all of the images you use to be also inside this folder so that when you move this folder, this file with you, all the links remain. It's just like InDesign. If you took this to another computer and you opened it up, all your links would be broken and none of your stuff would work because your images were still on the computer that you started the file in. So that's something really important to understand about both InDesign and Muse, where Muse is essentially, at least to my mind, the InDesign of web design. It's kind of what it is. So once you've designed this basic look of your master page, you're going to want to start looking at some of your widgets. So let's take a peek at those. So the first one that we're going to explore is the menu. And now the menus you can just drag out, and it will build the menu based on what existed in your portfolio sitemap. So in this case, I'm actually going to delete that because I want to show you kind of some of the interesting ways you can combine these widgets. So we're going to look at all these widgets, but I do want to show you that we have a panels widget too. So if I click it, you can kind of see in the preview up here what it looks like, but I'm going to show you a neat way you can use it. So if I drag out this accordion panel, I can add more sections to it with this plus, or I can take sections away by deleting the sections. So just clicking the titles and deleting them. So now I have one section. I'm going to click the expand behavior right here, and I'm going to say can close all. And I'm going to say overlap items below. And now watch what will happen. So I can click this and it will close and open, close and open. And this is kind of neat because if I set this up here and I set the text as navigation, highlight that and set that to center, I can delete all of this text out of this panel. I believe I can even delete this text box. Let's see. Yep, so I deleted that. You can see I still have this panel. And now I can actually grab a menu and drop it into this panel, which is kind of a neat feature here. So that being said, now I can close and open my navigation. So this is kind of the power of widgets. The hardest part is once you start getting widgets inside widgets, it becomes really irritating to click things. It's hard to grab all of the items. And you can see here I have to go through a little bit of editing to get it to sort of fit nicely. So I may grab that. I can see that I have a stroke on this. I don't want a stroke. So I'm going to set that to none and 0. And hopefully that'll take it off. Sometimes you're clicked not where you need to be. So you can see I clicked the wrong thing. So now I can see that gray stroke that I don't want. I'm going to set that to 0. And I'm going to set it to none just in case. So now I kind of have this little navigation item that pops open with my menu. Now if I want to edit this further, I can just click the items, and a lot of times you can go to the states panels to make adjustments. In this case, you can see if I click through the different states, I can adjust how they look. So if I don't want this to be white when it's active, all I have to do is click the object, go to the states panel, select active, and then I can make any changes I want to make. So maybe I want it to be dark gray when it's actually active versus normal, roll over, mouse down, and active. So let's say that that's what I want. I'm going to select the active state again, and this time I'm going to actually change the type color because I do want that to be white. So I'm going to come to text, select that, and it looks like I might have to check some other things here because it kind of looks like when I click these that they may have a stroke on them, and they do. So when I'm on active, it looks like I have a stroke. I'm going to take that item off, and I'm going to set that to 0. So I'm going to check my mouse down and make sure, see once again there's a stroke, so I have to come back through the panels individually to change some of these effects that were applied automatically when I created the widget. But now it should look, oh, one more stroke, take that off. Now I should have a pretty seamless navigation that opens up and closes kind of together. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to click back through my states to make sure that I didn't miss anything. And there we go. You can see that the text stays the same for all of them. So when I made that text white, kind of affected the way it reads on here. So I may have to adjust that individually. So let's see if I can get into the text there. See, it looks like once I get to text, the states, I can't define states for text. So in this case, I'm going to have to actually just pick a color that will work for all of them. So I'll pick this medium gray, and I'll actually just change my state background colors. So this is the nature of what you're going to be going through when you adjust this. So I can see that that normal state, not very visible. Let's make that actually black. And then we'll go to rollover. We'll change that color as well. We'll make that medium gray, but I'll make it slightly darker. And if I need to copy that color, I'll just come in and grab the hex code. And it looks like it changed it from mouse down. These states are linked. If you want to delete a state, you can do that. Like if you don't want a mouse down state, you can just get rid of that state. In this case, it's going to generate it anyway, so I'm just going to leave it as is. I'm going to move my navigation over here, and now we're going to preview it. So you can see that all I have to do is click this item, and now I have links to the different pages. And you can see it is actually taking me to the pages because the navigation's closing back up. So there we go. So I can open up my nav and do something like that. I can then, of course, add rounded corners or do any of the little effects that I want to at a later stage. So I'm going to leave that as is. I'm going to save my site again. And I'm going to come back to my main area here. So now I can actually see my different pages and I can make adjustments. If I don't want them to all look the same, all I have to do is create a new master page. But if I don't want to go through all the edits, I can also right mouse click on it and hit duplicate master page and call this B master. Now with B master, I could come right in here, and maybe I don't want the navigation to be there. I don't know why, but perhaps I would want that to be different. Come back to portfolio site and drag these masters to the pages where I would want to apply them. So you have a lot of freedom with kind of how these backgrounds work. Now, one other thing that I do want to explain about master pages, because this is really important, is that your layers panel is kind of unique in Muse in that when you create layers, they will exist on all of your pages and they will continue to function the way you have them set up. So if I grab this layer 1, I double clicked, open this up, and I call this menu, I can see that my item, when I click it, a little blue dot appears. It can tell that it's on that layer. I can create another layer and call this one like footer objects or something of that nature. Click OK. Maybe I want sort of like a dark footer down here, so I can actually grab this rectangle tool, draw that footer. I'm going to drag the object past the bottom edge so that it will seem seamless. And then maybe I want no stroke, but I want it to be filled with a dark gray. And I want the top 2 corners to be rounded at 30%. And there you go. So now I have this footer object. Now something to note is now when I come into my other pages, those will update. But if I click like home, those layers stay. And that's important because watch what will happen. If I add a new layer here, and I call this layer, I don't know, I'll just call it object so you can see what I'm doing. And I make a new rectangle, I can actually place items in front of and behind objects that expand past that. Now in this case, the footer is in its own safe world down there. I can't really do anything with it. It's just going to expand the size of the page. However, if I come back to my master and I extend this up into the area where I can edit and come back, you can see that this object sits in front of the footer because the layer's on top. If I move this layer below, it will go behind the footer. So this is a little bit of a confusing concept, but it's important to understand that the layer object, the layers will stay the same across all of your pages. If I come back to a master now, that object layer exists. Even though on this page there's no white rectangle, that layer still shows up. So your layer order can make a big difference in how your site looks. So if you're having trouble with something like not going in front of or not going behind something that you want to go in front or behind, check your layer order and make sure that it kind of makes sense so that even though I cannot edit footer objects, I can see it, but I can't grab my footer object, it's still, its layer positioning is still making a difference in how this design functions. So I'm going to delete that object, I'm going to go back to a master, and I'm going to drop this down like this. So now that's extending into the exact area of the footer. So now if I click into the footer, I should be able to make some adjustments here. So if I wanted to add text, oh, maybe, so there we go. So you can see I'm typing, but nothing's happening because of the order of this footer. So by pulling that behind, now I can actually place items on top of the footer. So I could say something like copyright Danielle Feliciano. I could open this up a little bit. I believe that I can right mouse click on it, and I can move to layer, add to library, I can arrange, send it footer back. In this case, I'm just going to grab it, use my text panel to get it to look the way I want, center it. And then I'm going to use my align panel up here at the top. Align to, and this says content area and this says selection. It's a little hard to see. Pull those over so you can look at them. Nope. I'm going to hit center. It will center it in the area. And then now I have this object here. Now let's say I made this and I want to move it onto the master page. All I have to do is copy this item, and I should, I'm going to delete it, I should be able to come here and go to edit, paste, and place. And that will paste it exactly where it was. So that's one way you can move things from page to page and not have them be in different areas and not lined up, which can be really important in web. If you have your navigation menu and it's scooting over by like 10 pixels every time you switch pages, it doesn't look right. So that's something important there. So the last thing I'm going to show in this video, before we actually start adding real widget content, is how to, the last thing is adding text, essentially what I'm going to say here. So I know I went over this, but I want to show it one more time. In your text panel, this is a little easier than Dreamweaver and really nice feature. You have a couple panels here. You have recently used fonts, such as these. You have web fonts, and you have web safe fonts. So your best chance is to pick from your web safe fonts. However, you do have the freedom to choose these additional typefaces if that's what you want. So if you wanted English small caps, and you hit Option and use your arrow key to track them out, because small caps should always be tracked out, you can do that. However, if you want something a little unique, like let's say you're looking for a script typeface or something special, if you come to the Add Web Fonts from the Fonts panel, it's going to open up Typekit, and it's going to let you pick any of these typefaces that you want. And you can install them onto your computer, and then these will work as actual typefaces on the web. Now, whether it'll work in a really old machine, I don't know. It probably has sort of a backup typeface that it'll throw in there if it doesn't function. But this is nice because the text is still searchable, so it's live text, but it's a great way to add a little bit of extra decorative detail. Now, that being said, please do not put your entire website content in something like this. It's going to look so tacky. Don't do that. Use these, like a little bit of salt in the food. It's just seasoning. Don't like put the whole thing in there and make it too crazy with 50 different typefaces. It's going to look ugly. But that being said, there's so many great ones to pick from that you really shouldn't feel limited with this. If you want to use a typeface that you already have that is not a web-safe typeface, you can grab that. If we scroll down, you'll see system fonts. It also says exports as image. So that means any of these typefaces, if you use these, they will show up in Muse and you can edit them and move them around. But when it goes to web, they will become JPEGs or PNGs. They will become an image. So that's okay if you have a really special typeface you want to use for maybe a title or something, but I would use that sparingly. One way that I do like to use that is this typeface here. So let's pull that up. It's called Font Awesome, and let's see if I can get it. We'll see if I can pop it up that way. So Font Awesome. This is one you can download, and it's really neat because it's icons. So instead of having to build all of these visual icons, you can just download this typeface and find them all this way. Now, the one thing that's kind of hard is being able to sort of find these. So once you've installed this typeface, the way I like to go find my icons is to actually open up Illustrator. So, and I'll show you how to use the Glyphs panel, because for some reason in Muse I don't think there's a Glyphs panel, which is kind of silly, but I understand their purpose in that. And if I open Adobe Illustrator and I just make a new file of whatever, I can actually open my Glyphs panel, which just happens to be right here. But if you don't see it, go to Window, and then it should be Type Glyphs. So right there, Glyphs. And when you open the Glyphs panel, you get to see every character for that typeface, and you can copy and paste these back into Muse. This is kind of the one weird way I use Font Awesome. Let me see if I can find, there we go, Font Awesome. So if I pull up Font Awesome, I can see every character that I have access to. I think I have a slightly older version of Font Awesome. You can look at the entire font, alternates for current selection, and you can just sort of add these characters in. So if I just create a text box here, I can just double click this. I can copy and paste this right back over into Muse. So if I created a text box, I can paste that character in. And now it's not showing up because I think Font Awesome is not installed here because of my, there we go, to the function. I'm having problems. I think there's some alignment issues here. It does work because I've done it about 1 million times. But there's a little bit of an issue here because I had to have my computer wiped, so I'll have to reinstall the typeface properly. It's a broken link, but it will work. You will be able to copy and paste that over, and those will become images. So it's a really great way to get icons for your site. So that being said, that kind of sets us up and gets us sort of ready. I'm just sort of scaling this up. Gets us ready for the next stage of actually adding content to our portfolio site itself. So that's going to be the next video.